Yes, Professor.
Uh,
Yes, I'm here.
okay, okay. So today we are going to talk about instruction for artists. Basically, instruction artists is a guideline for artists when you are trying to submit your manuscript. Okay, so what is actually instruction for artists? Instruction for artists are rule of the game. So it describes how exactly the journal want your manuscript to be prepared and submitted. So if you want to play the rules of submitting a manuscript to a journal, you have to follow their rules. So instruction for artists is a rule journal. So where do you find instruction for artists? So in most of the journal, the name may not be instruction for artists. It could be for artists, it could be artist guideline, it could be submission guideline, depending on which journal are you submitting to. So do pay attention to the sections. This section for artists, artist guidelines, submission for artists. They are all instruction for artists, which you need to read before you submit. So when do you have to read instruction for artists? Usually, we encourage students to set a journal where they want to write their manuscript to. I know most of the time we write a manuscript and then we find a journal to submit to. However, in best practice, we encourage the students to determine which journal they want to submit to first, read their instruction for authors before you begin to write, because the style of each journal could be very different. Okay, so why should you read this instruction for authors? This is to prevent desk rejection due to formatting issue. So desk rejections, the meaning of desk rejections is that you submit a manuscript to a journal, and then before it reached the editor, the managing team will reject your manuscript because the format is wrong. Okay, this is called a desk rejections. When you submit to a journal and then they find that your formatting is wrong, they decide not to pass it to the editor-in-chief and not to submit it to peer review. That is called a desk rejections. So we want to avoid that because that's very time consuming. It take about 1 to 3 days for a journal to desk reject your manuscript. We also want to facilitate assessment by editors and reviewers because when they read your manuscript, they have a fixed idea how the manuscript should look like. So if you follow their rules, then it will fulfill the expectations and then it's easier for them to pass your manuscript, for the editor to pass your manuscript along to the peer reviewers. And then if you follow their rules, it shows your interest and intention to publish in that journal, which is quite important. So as I say, instruction for authors, the phrase may not appear in the journal website. So you'll find that for authors or under submission guideline, okay, in different journal, guideline for authors, okay. So most of the time when you reach the first sections of the instructions of authors, you have a pre-submission checklist which you have to pay attention to. You'll find the aim and scope of the journal first. Okay, so you look at instruction authors, the first thing that come up is the aim and scope of the journal, which describe the field or interest of the journal and the audience of the journal, who is reading that journal. Okay, so this is very important to you because you want to know who you are writing to, and also whether your manuscript will fit the interest of the journal. It also describes the article type. Okay, what kind of article can be accepted or considered by the journal? Usually original article, review, a short communication, letters, case report, methods paper. There are some journal which will not consider review. Some of the journal like BMC, okay, plus one, scientific report, Peer J, not Peer J, Peer J now consider review. So these are some of the journals. They will only consider original research article and also systematic review, but not normal review. So where do you get this information? You get this from instruction for authors and the article type. What kind of article will be considered by the journal? So this too is very important because you want to ask yourself, okay, whether the thing you are writing, the manuscript you are writing, whether the topic fit the journal, and also whether it matches the journal's stated intentions, okay, interest, and also our targeted audience. You also want to check the fee and policies of the journals because nowadays a lot of journals charge article processing fee. You pay so that the reader can read your paper for free. Okay, there are two types of journals. One type you pay, reader read for free. So everyone can read your journal because you already paid the publication fees. The other type, you don't have to pay as an author. However, the reader have to pay to read your work. Okay, so sometimes you encounter this kind of journal, you cannot read because it is hidden behind a paywall. You need to pay first before you can read. So it's very important for you to understand the article processing charges policy of the journal because ultimately we don't expect students to pay. And usually our school will fund the article processing charges. However, we have limit. For UKM, for example, we will pay a Q1 journal up to 13K Malaysian ringgit, Q2 10K Malaysian ringgit to publish in that kind of Q1 and Q2 journal. So you have to make sure when you submit to a Q1 Q2 journal, the fees are not too high. Okay, so that your supervisors can claim this kind of fees from the journal. Okay, for some of the printed journal, they charge color printed pages, meaning that you have graph and also histology slides, which are available in color. If you want them to be published in color, they will charge you extra. Okay, but for online journal, this is not a concern. And also maybe you want to look at the peer review model of the journal. So when the journal submit a manuscript to peer reviewer, whether it's single blinded, meaning that the reviewer know who you are, or a double blinded, meaning that you don't know the reviewer don't know you because your name is hidden, or it is an open peer review. Open peer review meaning that anyone can actually comment on your manuscript. So this affect how you are going to prepare your manuscript file. If it is a single blinded, usually you are not required to prepare a separate title page. However, when it is a double blinded submissions, then you need to prepare a separate title page so to be submitted separately to the journal. So these are very important considerations when you are doing your when you're reading your instruction for authors. It affect your decision whether your manuscript fit the journal, whether you can pay for publication here, and also how you are going to prepare your file. So this is an example of instruction for authors from a journal called Postgraduate Medicine. So this journal is quite friendly for postgraduate students. However, in this journal, you do have to publish something that's very clinical because this is a journal that consider clinical studies. So you look at the aim and scope, you see that this journal support primary physician in solving clinical problem and improving patients' care. So in this journal, you cannot submit fundamental studies. Studies in rat, studies in cell, you cannot submit here because it support primary care physicians. Okay, primary care physicians is like family physicians. So you only can submit clinical studies. Also, you consider original research, reviews, articles, and also editorials. Okay, so these are the things you can submit a review here. Okay, apart from original studies. And also the readership are physicians within internal and also family practice. So these are the readers. So when you are submitting, your manuscript should fall into this field, internal medicines or family practitioners. And it is a double-blinded peer review journal, meaning that the reviewer wouldn't know who you are, and you wouldn't know the reviewer, of course. So When you're reading also, you have to look at the manuscript formatting of the manuscript. Sometimes, most of the time, the journal will ask you to prepare in Microsoft Word or a LaTeX format. LaTeX is not very common in Malaysia. Here, we usually use Microsoft Word, either in DOC or DOCX file. If it is a double-blinded review, you have to make sure that your main text do not contain any author's name, affiliation, or sign of citations. Okay. And also for outline, sorry, for layout, you have to make sure the line spacing, font sizes, page number, and line numbers are according to the requirement of the journal. Sometimes line number are quite important because reviewer, when they want to name the comment, they will see refer to which line. So sometimes journal asks you to put down line numbers. Otherwise, it's not necessary. Well, writing as well, on the instruction for authors as well, you will learn the manuscript structure required by the journals. From the title page, you learn what must be included. Usually, all the author's name, affiliations, corresponding author details, for example, office address, email, telephone numbers, keywords, and ORCID. You might not be very familiar with ORCID. I'm going to show you later. It is like identification card or ID for all researcher. So if you want to write, it's better for you to register yourself in ORCID first. And then abstract, you have to look whether it is a single paragraph abstract or a structured abstract with a heading like background aim, methods, result, conclusions. Okay, and what's the word limit for the abstract? Is it 150, 200, 250, or 300? So this will affect the structuring of your manuscript. Keywords, how many are required? Usually 3 to 5. And subheadings, does the journal require certain subheading? For example, every journal have introductions, but materials and method or methods only, look at the requirement journal, the result discussions. Sometimes the journal asks the result discussion to be combined. Okay, so it's very important you read first the instruction authors before you actually write the manuscript. So this is ORCID. Okay, so ORCID, you can Google, okay, ORCID, and then you register yourself in ORCID. You get a name, okay, and also you get this number. This number is required by many of the publisher. You want to publish that, you have to have this ORCID number to prove that you are a verified researcher. Okay, you are a person, not a random fake persons online. So once you have registered ORCID number, the next time you publish, all your data will be collected by ORCID. So you will have a list of papers collected here. Registration for this profile is free. You don't have to pay. Okay, so we do encourage if you are a first-time researcher, you have to register for this ORCID number. So while you are writing also, instruction authors usually will tell you where to place your figures and table. Sometimes the journal will ask the figure and table to be put in the main text of your manuscript. Sometimes they ask you to upload separately. Sometimes they ask you to be placed after the references. Okay, so this is very important to know. And also what kind of file format that is accepted for figures, for example. Do they ask for TIFF file, APS file, JPEG file, and things like that? And what is the minimum resolutions for your figure? Resolutions means that how clear your figure should be, okay? Usually, the minimum required for figure is 300 dpi for color figure, and also if you are using a very simple schematic diagram, the resolution required usually will be 600 dpi. Okay, so there's a common rule for journals. Sometimes the legends of the figures and table have to be submitted in a separate file. Okay, so all this requirement will be different according to journal, and you have to go through the instruction authors to know it. Next will be the most important part as well, the references. This is usually this part usually cause a lot of headache to the researcher. So what's the requirements? Now you have to look at the journal. Sometimes they require Vancouver, sometimes APA, sometimes Harvard, sometimes AMA. Look at the citation as well. Sometimes the citation can be in a round bracket, could be in square bracket, could be in, this is what we call a JAMA format. You put the number after the punctuations, or whether they require name and year. So different journal, they have different requirement. You have to look at the citations, instructions for authors to learn about it. If you are in a hurry, you don't have time to read the instruction authors, just open a PDF of the journal article and have a look what kind of citation and reference format required by the journal. In terms of references as well, sometimes the journal names are abbreviated, sometimes they use full journal names. So that's this one you have to pay attention to as well. For the students, I encourage you to learn about EndNote or Mendeley or Zotero. These are the three most important citation manager software in Malaysia. Usually when you are writing a manuscript or even you are writing your thesis, you have to organize your references using this kind of software so you don't miss any. I'm not sure, Miss Tang, are you from China? Yeah. So Miss Tang, if you are
Yes,
from China,
yes.
yeah, if you are from China, then China have their own reference manager software. Maybe Kings, maybe the name is Kings. However, most of the lecturers here in Malaysia, they don't use King. We use EndNote or Mendeley. So you have to install a new one. EndNote is you have to pay, you have to buy EndNote, but you can go to library and ask for EndNote. They have a free copy for students. Okay, so when you write manuscript, you use EndNote, it's easier for you to organize your references and you won't miss any of the references. When you delete the citation, usually the bibliography will be rearranged again. Mendeley also can, and Mendeley is free. Zotero is also free, but Zotero is not so popular in UKM. Okay, so you can use this. And you have to learn how to use this. It's very important. Example here, if you see this instruction for authors, if they require the citation to be in the square bracket format, okay, they actually have a citation format for you. You can download this file from EndNote or Zotero, meaning that you can go to click this link, it will lead you to a website, you can download the format, put it into EndNote, and then you can use. Okay, so you'll be exactly in the style they want. Or else they'll give you example. These are the journal article format, and you are more than welcome to follow this format if you are organizing all this manually. But again, students, because you are using a lot of references. Okay, the last time I go to a Viva, PhD Viva, the student used 900 references. Imagine you have to do 900 references manually. So do not do that. Use EndNote or Mendeley. Another part that's often overlooked by students when you're writing your manuscript will be the declaration and back matters. These are the sections after your conclusions. And it is very important, although sometimes you overlook it, but it's very important for the editors. In these declarations, you declare your ethics and disclosure, meaning that whether your study need ethical approval, you have to indicate your ethical approval number here, and then whether you have the ethical approval code. Authorship as well. Nowadays, to avoid ghost authorship, we asked the journal will ask the authors to declare the contributions of each author in this manuscript, whether it's data collections, whether it's supervisions, obtaining funding, resources, or writing the manuscript, or review the manuscript. Every authors have to have a role in the manuscript. No one can um, be as an author but did nothing for the manuscript. Okay, on how to write these sections, each of the journal have their own format. Okay, so you have read how to write author's contributions. Conflict of interest is very important as well because all of the authors must declare whether they have financial or non-financial conflict in the studies. What are conflict of interest? So as a student, of course, you don't really have any conflict of interest. But for your supervisors, most of your supervisors, sometimes they are consultant for a company. Or maybe this project is funded by a company, meaning that your supervisor are getting money from the company to do this study. So the act of getting contribution from a company sometimes influence the decision how to analyze the data and also interpret the result. So this should be declared, saying that, oh, this doctor receives sponsorship from this company, or this doctor is a shareholder of this company. Not to say that editor will reject the manuscript because of the conflict of interest, but just to let the readers know. The authors are very transparent. They declare that they receive fund for this company. However, this kind of contribution or sponsorship doesn't affect the interpretations or data collections. This is very important. If it is discovered afterwards, you don't declare and then people discover, oh, this doctor or this author actually received money from the company, then the manuscript will be retracted. Okay, if people discover later. Funding statement as well, you have to acknowledge all the grant you received for doing this study and who sponsored this study. And data availability statement is very popular nowadays, whereby you have to declare whether the readers can get your raw data or not. Sometimes we deposit all the raw data in a database, and the reader can actually get the data and analyze themselves. If the data is not available to the reader, you have to explain why the data is not available to the readers. Is it because the funding body ban you from sharing the data, or the data very sensitive? You have to say it out. And then approval, ethical approval, you state your IRB number and also animal approval number in ethical approval. Sometimes you already stated in your manuscript, but you have to repeat it again and in the declarations. And also, if you are getting human subject, you have to disclose that whether informed consent has been provided before they join the studies. So declaration is very important. Anything wrong in the declarations sometimes will lead to direct rejections of your manuscript. So before you submit your manuscript, usually they also tell you which kind of editorial system are they using. The most popular system will be Editorial Manager or Scholar One. Before you submit, you have to prepare all your file first, your main text, title page, cover letter, supplementary materials, and all the figures file first before you actually go into the submission system. I would advise you to have all the file ready as required by the instruction authors. Because once you enter the Scholar One or submission system, if you look at the system and you discover that, oh, I need this file, I need to prepare now. By the time you prepare the file, you'll be automatically logged out from the system. Okay, and then this will disrupt your submission process. So better you have a look at what kind of file are needed first, prepare them accordingly before you log into the system. Then you just a matter of submitting all the file. Okay, and double check that you have uploaded the correct file. Okay, because the correct file required for blinded and blinded review are different. So some journal nowadays, a lot of journal require you to submit the raw data. Okay, so if you are submitting to a file, a type of manuscript called data report, you need to submit the data. And also, if you are running sequencing, for example, NGS, transcriptomic, proteomic, or even genomic data, the data, it is compulsory for you to submit the result into the raw data to be deposited to a repository so that it can be accessed by a lot of people, the readers. For those of you running Western blot, gel blot, okay, and even microscope image, the histology images, it is also nowadays compulsory for you to upload your original Western blot. Okay, if you are familiar with Western blot, you know that you have a square blot with a lot of empty spaces. So sometimes when we put this Western blot in our manuscript, we cut the bottom empty part and also the top empty part, only leave the bands, okay, in our image file. However, when you are submitting a manuscript, most of the journal require you now to submit the uncut Western blot, the original Western blot without empty spaces, and each of the blot must be submitted, okay, to prove that you didn't alter your images. That also goes with gel blot for, let's say you are running PCR, and also microscopic images, because sometimes when we construct the images for our histological slides, we put arrows, we label the figures, okay, for all the points that is needed to pay attention to. The journal nowadays, for example, NDPI, they will request the unaltered microscopic histology images to be uploaded as well. Okay, to prove that you didn't alter the image or change the color intensity of the image. Okay, so these are the requirements you need to pay attention to as well. So additional note, these are some of the recent development in terms of instruction authors, whereby most of the journal nowadays, not most, but many of the journal, for example, all NDPI journals, and also all Frontiers journal, they will give you a Microsoft template. So you download this template and then you paste your manuscript inside the template according to a requirement, then your manuscript is ready to go. So it's very easy. You don't have to format yourself. You download their template and paste your own manuscript into their template, then it can be submitted. And the machine, their submission electronic machines will actually read this template and fill the column for you in the submission system. So if you are submitting next time, pay attention whether the journal prepare you a template to follow. Then in many of the journal nowadays, they offer you free format submissions, meaning that they don't care about your format. As long as you have the important subheadings, general structure of manuscript, then you are free to submit. Okay. However, this is not true for all journal. Only certain journal offer this service. You can just submit. First time submit, you just submit. So if if they reject you, then you are not wasting a lot of time formatting. However, if your manuscript get revised, get a comment from reviewer, the second submission you have to follow that format. The first submission you don't have to. Second submission you have to. Because in second submissions, resubmissions following review reply comments, meaning that they actually are considering your manuscript already. So you have to properly format your manuscript. So this is actually from Wiley. I think some of the journal in Wiley are considering free format submission. Some journal in Elsevier also are considering free format submission. So first time, whatever format is okay. Second time, after comment, then you have to follow the journal format. And also, we used to have a saying, when you submit a manuscript, it can be only submitted to a journal. You cannot submit this manuscript concurrently together many journals. This is not allowed. However, nowadays, for some of the journal, when you submit a manuscript through the platform to the publisher, it will be considered simultaneously by many journals. And the journal that want you will take your manuscript. Okay, so you don't have to submit to many. Your manuscript will be considered by multiple journals. Okay, so I'm someone who's working on bones. So one of our favorite journals would be Osteoporosis International. So usually in Osteoporosis International, when I submit my manuscript, it will be simultaneously considered by three journals, either Osteoporosis International, Calcified Tissues, or Archives of Osteoporosis. Each journal have their different requirement. So all of them will consider yours, and then the journal which actually fit the scope will take your manuscript. So you don't have to submit 3 times. Okay. However, again, if the journal is not offering this service, you still cannot submit your manuscript to multiple journals. Okay, one journal at a time. So the conclusion for this first part is that you check your instruction for authors before you start writing. You format you format your manuscript and show compliance. Okay, so that the editor can see your intention to submit to this journal. Have all your files ready, all the details ready, all the author's email ready before you start your submission process. Use a reference manager to avoid and comply to all these formatting requirements to avoid desk rejections. Again, desk rejection is when the editorial team get your manuscript to check the format wrong, they return to you. Okay, that is very time consuming. It will waste you 1 to 3 days. Okay, you want to avoid that. So this is the first part of the lecture.